Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel where we cut through the noise of American politics to get to the heart of what's really shaking things up. Today, we're tackling something that's been buzzing in the corridors of power and on every political podcast from coast to coast, the unitary sovereignty theory. You've probably seen the headlines screaming about it, especially with that provocative tagline floating around. Is this the US president's ultimate selfishness? It's a question that's not just rhetorical, it's igniting fierce debates about power, accountability, and what it means to lead a nation in 2025. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's unpack this layer by layer, because by the end, you'll see why this theory isn't just some dry legal footnote. It's a seismic shift that could redefine how democracy works in the United States. Let's start at the beginning, because to understand the storm, you have to know the roots. The unitary sovereignty theory, at its core, is a constitutional interpretation that argues the president holds absolute and undivided authority over the entire executive branch. Picture this. No pesky internal checks from cabinet secretaries or agency heads diluting the chief executive's will. It's all one unified chain of command flowing directly from the Oval Office. Proponents say it's straight out of the Constitution's playbook, harking back to Article 2, which vests executive power in a single president. They argue that anything less leads to chaos, a fragmented government where unelected bureaucrats run the show, undermining the people's elected leader. It's sold as efficiency, clarity, a way to cut through the red tape that's strangled modern governance. But here's where it gets thorny, and why that word selfishness keeps cropping up. Critics, and there are plenty, from constitutional scholars to civil liberties watchdogs, see it as a blatant power grab, a theory dressed up in legal finery to justify one person's whims over the collective good. Imagine a president who can fire anyone in the federal workforce at will, override independent agencies like the EPA or the FBI without a whisper of oversight, and push policies that might serve personal vendettas or donor interests rather than the public weal. It's not hard to see the selfish angle. Why share power when you can hoard it? This isn't some abstract philosophy, it's a blueprint for a presidency that's more monarch than manager, echoing the very kingly abuses the Founding Fathers rebelled against in 1776. To really grasp how we got here, let's rewind the tape a bit. The seeds of unitary sovereignty were planted early in the Republic's soil. Think back to the 1780s when Hamilton was scribbling away in the Federalist Papers, championing a strong executive to counterbalance Congress's meddling. But it simmered on the back burner for decades, popping up sporadically in court battles over things like war powers or regulatory enforcement. Fast forward to the 20th century, and you see glimmers during the New Deal era, when FDR's expansive vision tested the limits of presidential reach. Yet it was really in the post-Watergate hangover of the 1980s that the theory started to flex its muscles, with Reagan's administration pushing back against congressional encroachments on executive turf. The real ignition came in the early 2000s, amid the fog of the War on Terror. George W. Bush's legal team dusted off unitary sovereignty arguments to justify enhanced surveillance, indefinite detentions, and a host of executive orders that bypassed traditional hurdles. It was controversial then, but nothing like the wildfire it's become today. Enter the Trump years, where the theory went from academic whisper to megaphone roar. Remember the travel bans, the family separations at the border, the relentless assaults on the so-called deep state. Each move leaned hard on the idea that the president and the president alone calls the shots in the executive realm. And let's not forget the Supreme Court's recent flirtations, decisions like the 2020 silo law ruling that struck down limits on firing heads of independent agencies, or the immunity blockbuster from last summer that carved out space for official acts beyond prosecution. These weren't just wins for one side, they were green lights for a bolder, more untrammeled presidency. Now, why 2025? Why is this theory suddenly the political equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane? Well, timing is everything in Washington, and we've got a perfect storm brewing. The 2024 election left scars deeper than most, with razor-thin margins and accusations of institutional capture flying from both parties. Whichever way the White House tilted, and I'm not spoiling the drama here for those just catching up, the incoming administration inherited a bureaucracy that's more polarized than ever. Enter unitary sovereignty as the ultimate fixer-upper. For the hawks on the right, it's a tool to dismantle what they call regulatory overreach, slashing climate rules or immigration safeguards with a presidential stroke. On the left, it's eyed warily as a Trojan horse for future abuses, but some moderates whisper it could streamline responses to crises like the ongoing supply chain snarls or cyber threats from abroad. Take the headlines from just this summer. That NPR piece in July laid it bare, with legal eagles arguing the theory's time has come to restore eroded presidential authority after decades of congressional gridlock. Then Democracy Docket dropped their February deep dive, warning how it's being weaponized to pack the executive with loyalists, sidelining career experts who might dare to say no. And by October, with midterm whispers turning to shouts, states were pushing back hard. Think California and New York governors invoking federalism to shield their policies from federal steamrollers. It's not hyperbole to say this theory is shaking up politics at every level. Congressional hearings are turning into gladiatorial arenas, think tanks are turning out white papers like confetti, and even late-night hosts are riffing on it as the new "Emperor has no clothes" punchline. But let's zero in on that selfishness charge, because it's the emotional core of this whole kerfuffle. Detractors aren't mincing words, they call it the ultimate ego trip, a president's bid to play God in a system designed for mortals. Picture the Oval Office occupant, insulated by sycophants, issuing edicts that ripple out unchecked. We've seen previews: the rushed vaccine mandates during the pandemic, the abrupt withdrawal from Afghanistan, the tariff wars that hit farmers hardest. Each time, the unitary lens justified it as decisive leadership, but at what cost? When power consolidates, accountability evaporates, whistleblowers get sidelined, ethics probes fizzle out, and the public, you and me, end up footing the bill for one leader's blind spots or biases. It's selfish because it prioritizes the thrill of command over the grind of collaboration, the flash of unilateral action over the wisdom of deliberative democracy. Scholars like those at the ACLU frame it starkly. This isn't stewardship, it's solipsism, where the president's vision eclipses the nation's mosaic of voices. Yet, to be fair, because analysis demands balance, there's a counter-narrative worth hearing. In a world of 24/7 crises, from AI upheavals to climate tipping points, can we afford a president hobbled by internal dissent? Unitary sovereignty, its defenders say, isn't selfishness, it's survival. It empowers swift action, like mobilizing resources for disaster relief without layers of sign-off or countering foreign disinformation campaigns before they metastasize. We've got 4 million federal employees. Without a clear chain of command, paralysis sets in. And let's face it, Congress has been a no-doing club for years, punting tough calls to the executive anyway. Why not formalize it, make the president truly accountable at the ballot box rather than diffused through anonymous agencies? It's a compelling pitch, especially when trust in institutions is at rock bottom. So where does this leave us, staring down the barrel of 2026 and beyond? The unitary sovereignty theory isn't going away. It's embedding itself deeper into the marble halls. Recent polls show a stark divide, urban liberals decrying it as democratic backsliding, rural conservatives cheering it as overdue empowerment. The Supreme Court, with its conservative tilt, seems poised to tip further in its favor, potentially gutting what's left of independent oversight in upcoming terms. For everyday Americans, the stakes are visceral. Will your healthcare access hinge on one person's fiat? Will environmental protections vanish overnight? Or, optimistically, will it finally unclog the pipes, letting bold ideas flow freely? In the end, this theory forces us to confront a timeless tension: the allure of strongman simplicity versus the messy beauty of shared governance. Is it ultimate selfishness, a president's hubris writ large, or is it the pragmatic salve for a fractured republic? Only time and perhaps the next election cycle will tell. But one thing's certain, ignoring it won't make it disappear. It's a mirror held up to our body politic, reflecting back our deepest fears and faint hopes. What do you think? Power grab or power up? Drop your takes in the comments below. I read every one and love the discourse. If this sparks something in you, smash that like button, subscribe for more breakdowns like this, and I'll see you in the next video where we tackle the ripple effects on state sovereignty. Cheers, and stay vigilant out there.